How's it going, everyone? Today's special guests are Barry Kerch, the drummer for the platinum rock band Shinedown, and one of our favorite guests is Keith Cooke, who is a five-time world champion, actor, stuntman, overall incredible individual. And I must say, Keith, the previous talk with you has been one of our most well-received, and every day I still get messages saying, man, I had no idea that guy was kicking Luke Hang's ass, or I had no idea how prolific this guy was in the actual martial arts community. So thank you for coming back on here.
Thanks for having me on again. I had no idea that it did well. That's great.
Yeah, no, we every day I get a message or Twitter or someone, hey man, like this guy, like, is this guy on social media? Like, I had no idea this guy was doing the Alita movie, and so it's kind of cool that people are receptive of that.
I enjoyed it. I watched it.
So one of the cool things I'm doing for the month of December is kind of bringing on different guests that might not necessarily be in the same realm of whatever. We have a drummer, martial arts here, but a lot of things we can all kind of relate to are the fitness and the love of martial arts and kind of that stuff right here. So let's just jump in here. With COVID going on, how has your routines kind of changed, specifically to maybe eating habits, health, fitness, and stuff like that? I'll start with you, Keith.
Well, as far as eating, I'm eating exactly the same as before COVID. I'm not going into work. I used to teach a 6 a.m. fitness class Monday through Friday every day, and an 8:30 every day also. Now I'm just doing the 8:30, and we're doing them live on a Zoom. And my wife really likes that because I was always gone. I wouldn't see the girls in the morning, for breakfast or anything. And now I'm kind of hanging around. And so that part has been really cool. And I'll have to admit, not teaching 2 fitness classes every morning has been great. Just doing one. And so I can really focus on it. And what I do is I work out with the class, and I'm actually loving it. The Zooms are hard because you have to, I still teach a lot of live Zoom kids martial arts classes too for our clients that we already have, because we haven't been open since, I think we closed on March 13th, and we haven't been able to open back up. So, I have these clients out there. And so, like I mentioned, I've been doing some of them privately in their backyards, or they come here, and then we do the Zooms for groups. And I love it. I think having some experience in the film business has helped, because you're always thinking of the POV, and stuff like that.
Sure.
And so I always I turn my back on them so they can copy me, because one of the things that I've learned through teaching for years and years is to put yourself in a position where you can present it in a way where the person learning doesn't have to turn it around in their head or something, And so I try to demonstrate things. So when I face the camera, I'll go southpaw. When I turn away from the camera, I go orthodox, so they can kind of mirror me or copy me exactly, And so I think it's been a really good experience that way. What I've noticed is I've gotten in, a lot better shape, because I'm demonstrating so much stuff now. Like, where when you're in a class, you have some kid in the class demonstrate it. Here, Johnny, do that double round kick. Now I'm doing it. Everything. So anyway, I like it. I like it a lot, actually. So, but that's the main difference.
Yeah. For me, it's been eating wise a lot easier at home, because I love to cook, and not being on the road touring, trying to find a healthy meal or trying to order well for an after show meal or catering or whatnot, that can get pretty daunting, as John knows. So, for me being home, the eating's been great. When it comes to the workout side of thing and the fitness side of thing, I've been sidelined a lot of this year because I injured my elbow early this year in January, and really I've been PT and injections and the whole thing, trying to get my elbow back in shape, and it's doing much better. But that kind of sidelined me, but in a good way. It took away the enjoyable workouts that I like to do with bodyweight stuff or boxing or martial arts and things of that nature. Those are gone. Took away my drumming, which is exercise as well, for a minute. And it forced me to do something I hate, which is running. And I've learned to enjoy it. I've learned to find that peace in my head, which is something I've fought my whole life. I've never enjoyed running. It's never been a thing for me. I found it boring. So that's been kind of icing on the cake is being able to still force yourself to get exercise, because that's good for the mental game, even though you are sidelined with maybe an injury and can't do what you enjoy.
Yeah. I hear you. What happened to your elbow? I mean, what kind of injury is it?
Luckily, it was a severe tendonitis, both sides.
Oh, wow.
Elbow, but I really tore it up pretty bad, and it's kind of bittersweet, because the way I did it was, we had come home off tour last December, and I was playing with my 9-year-old daughter. We were having a dance party late at night one night, having a good time, and she kept spinning into me, and I kept putting her in the air, spinning into me, putting her in the air, spinning into me, and then I woke up the next morning. I was like, whoa, that hurt, and then I didn't rest it, and I kept doing what I was normal doing, playing drums, working out, push-ups, pull-ups, that whole thing, and really messed it up, to where I finally took a knee to the doctor and got all the scans and whatnot. And they're like, yeah, you're in trouble. So we did cortisone and PT, and the cortisone's a Band-Aid, as you guys know. So it came back once that wore off, and ended up doing some plasma injections and really focusing hard on rehabilitation. And it's been good. And I've learned a lot more about patience with myself and not pushing through the pain. And I can only imagine, Keith, how much you've gone through with the not only your martial arts experience, but the movies and doing stunts and stuff. I'm sure you've been injured a million times. So, when you're in pain and you really have to take a knee, how frustrating that can be.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this came up, but I had hip replacement surgery.
Wow.
About 10 years ago. And it's actually called hip resurfacing. And what's his name? Murray, the tennis player, just had it, and he went back and won a tournament, because it's not the one where they cut your femur off. They actually grind down the ball, and then they put a new cup in the socket. And it's usually, like combinations of very hard, lightweight metals that, so it's metal on metal, and your own body fluids kind of lubricate the joint. And it's been unbelievable, but my left one didn't take. And so I had to go back and do a revision, because one of the parts fell out, actually, when I was riding my motorcycle. It kind of vibrated out, and man, that was painful. Oh man. I got home and I got off my bike and I couldn't stand up. So
I think mine pales in comparison to something of that nature.
I'm trying to outdo you. That, and I got in a really bad motorcycle accident. This is after the hip surgery, and I broke my back in 2 places, and I broke my pelvis in 3 places, and like 6 ribs, and I got a bad concussion, But it was surprising, like when you're in good shape, and I was in good shape at the time, you tend to heal up faster, I think. And I hit a car. I kind of T-boned. Somebody came out of a driveway that wasn't looking, and I hit the front of the car and went over the car, and I was going about 50. And so I had to, I knew that might happen one day. So I knew I didn't want to hit the car with my body. And so I went over the car and tucked, and then just went ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom down the street, And anyway.
How hard is it when someone wants to get they don't want to wake up because they feel like, oh, I don't want to do this workout today? Personally, I'm better now, but with the onset of COVID, I had this kind of thing where it's like, I don't need to work out today, or man, it's dreary out. What are some of the mental hurdles stuff you guys kind of have to, or what advice do you have to people that they might not want to work out today? How do you kind of get them to understand that once you finish that workout, you're going to feel amazing?
Right. For me, I think having accountability with a friend or a family member. I can go to my wife and say, tomorrow morning I got to get up and run. Can you kick me out the door? If I'm not feeling it. And there are those days where you're not feeling it. And then I think and then you do. Once you finish a workout, and even if you weren't all there, or it wasn't your best workout, or you didn't achieve the goals you wanted to in that workout, or maybe you cut it short because you just weren't feeling it, you got to listen to your body. You still feel better afterwards. And then those days that, you might skip, for me, not beating yourself up about it, going, you know what, today it didn't happen, but tomorrow, you better believe it's going to happen, and maybe then some. But, you get in that cycle of, oh, I didn't do it, and then you start beating yourself up, and then your mental game goes, forget it. I'm not going to do it tomorrow either. I'm done with this. And you can get caught in that cycle, especially when we're all stuck at home with the COVID stuff. It's really hard. And I've got a lot of distractions between the wife, 9-year-old daughter, dogs, making dinner every day, which is something I enjoy. But I go, I'm going to make that dinner and I'm going to skip my workout today. You got to push yourself.
I love that point about not beating yourself up. I think that's really key in a lot of areas, and I've thought about it from a martial artist standpoint, when you're sparring and you make a mistake and you take a shot or whatever, if you get stuck like in regret of that shot, and in a sense, you're beating yourself up for getting hit. And meanwhile, the other guy is just beating you up more, I'm like, no, I want to pay attention to what's happening right now. And I think that kind of an attitude where you beat yourself up, usually you're stuck in the past. You're not in the present moment, and I also agree with you a lot on the thing of, I think this is very useful. I use it with kids a lot because kids, their parents are driving them to their lesson and they're giving the parent hell. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go. And I'm really on parents to really encourage their kids, not even in a negative way, just encourage them to come, because if you can remember how you feel afterwards, which is what you were saying, rather than how you feel right now, it'd be so much easier to stay home and watch TV or play video games than go and do that workout. But if you can remember how you feel, even during it and after it, if you can challenge yourself and you can make that the habit, it's so useful. I have to remind myself of that every day. I'm telling you, I have to tell myself, hey, dude, you're going to feel good after. And every single time I do. And that's how much you can change your own attitude. It's really empowering to be able to do that,
Sure.
I've kind of noticed where, again, like I had this goal when COVID hit, like, well, if I'm going to be home a lot, I could make myself feel healthier, be better. I've lost over 15 pounds just doing, every day I do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups before 5 p.m. Doesn't matter what increments. I can knock them all out now in one sitting, but I need to create kind of like that structure of what I can do every day. And now I do the stuff with the chop fit or these other runs or yard work. But I noticed the weight loss. Like I saw that. But the other thing I didn't realize, and I think you guys could both talk to this, that the physical fitness aspect is also partly your mental aspect too. Because now mentally, I wake up feeling my mind more clear. I'm more positive. If I am having a bad day, my mind is strong now where, hey man, someone could have much worse than you, like push on through. So I know, Keith, we've talked about this before, but like Barry and stuff, like the idea of physically the fitness, but the mental fitness as well.
Yeah, I think that really plays a huge part in it when you start not only seeing those gains, which is awesome, but once you break through that wall and you realize that it does so much for your brain and how focused you can become, you hear about runner's high and things of that nature. It is somewhat of an addiction. I know that once Shinedown as a band started getting healthy over 10 years ago and working out together and working out every single show day, which is 5 days a week, we'd work out show day, do an hour workout, and then we go into our meet and greets and stuff, and then we go play a show for another hour and a half, 2 hours. It made the show 10 times better mentally and physically, to where those days when maybe press was out of control and you just couldn't get the workout in, you'd go to stage frustrated. It'd be mentally frustrating because your body wasn't there 100%. So really it is a mental game, and it's a mental game to fight against it too and go, I got to get it done today, even if it's just something,
When I used to compete, I would say at the peak, I was going to a tournament every 2 weeks, and I wanted to try to peak for the tournaments. But basically, you just had to stay in shape because that's pretty often. And so I did a lot of running. I would run. I would weight train. I did a lot of push-ups. I ran stairs too. I did sprints, but I ran like 3 to 5 miles a day. And so I got so used to that, and a lot of my tournaments were on the East Coast. And I think I brought this up in the other interview. I never wanted to lose because the other guy was in better shape than me. And
Sure.
so fitness was a very high priority for me. If somebody was more talented, or they were faster, or they, whatever, I can understand. But I didn't want to be a lazy guy who didn't get myself in shape. So I'm gassed, and now I'm getting my ass kicked,
Mm-hmm.
And so I put the work in. And one of the things that I remember that I used to do, and people used to look at me like I was crazy, was, I always was on the West Coast, but a lot of the tournaments I went to were on the East Coast, and we would have to compete at 9 a.m. We were the first division. And so I would get up and take a run to make sure I was awake, because that was 6 a.m. my time. And so I'm competing at 6 a.m. my time. These guys are competing at 9 a.m. And so I felt it was an advantage for them. And so I didn't want to. So I would get up and go running. A lot of people were going to breakfast in the hotel, and they'd see me running. What are you doing? Are you crazy? I would say, no, this is what I do every day. I'll be recovered by the time we're competing. It wakes me up, makes me feel, clear in my head and confident. I know I'm ready. My body has been fully warmed up. It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things I want to talk to you guys about is, if you're an upcoming band or an upcoming martial artist and you're slowly going up the ranks, winning your fights and getting the hit song, what's more difficult for you guys mentally and physically? The chase to get to number one, or once you're at number one, maintaining that level as those young people that were once you are now nipping at your heels?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that initial chase might be harder in the respects of the amount of work you have to put in initially.
Right.
You have to really, you're going to suffer, you're going to struggle, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn from those mistakes, and you have to play the game, and you have to work up the ranks, and all those kinds of things you do to become a popular band, or to write a good song, or to learn how to write a good song, or even to learn martial arts. You got to get the basics down before you can move on and move up, and those are struggling times, getting those basics and getting better. And then once you get there, that's when you realize you can't rest on your laurels, and you still have to have that work ethic. And that's where I think a lot of people screw up. They're like, yeah, I'm here. I earned it. I got my trophy. I've got my number one, or whatever it might be. And that's just the beginning. You got to even work harder at that point, because yes, there's a bunch of people that want to knock you off the ladder, but you also can't, you have to keep your humility and stay humble and realize that it can go away tomorrow, and you better work just as hard to keep it once it's there. At least in my experience.
Love that.
I think humility is huge, and I think at times I've felt overly confident or cocky, and I think that's one of the first things I would point to, and that's a big mistake. I think being confident is great. Being cocky or arrogant is not great, and I just remember I was working in Seattle. I'm from Seattle, and I was working at a rent-a-car place when I was going to college, and I was trying to break out as a martial artist, And one day, I don't know if you remember Steve Largent, the wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. He was an all-pro. I think he was leading the NFL at the time, and he was famous in Seattle. Jim Zorn, Steve Largent connection, was awesome. But I heard a story about him where he was, some guy was covering the Seahawks, and he went to a practice, and they were done with the practice, and there was one guy out on the field running pass patterns by himself, doing the fakes and everything, making it as real as possible. And the reporter asked the guy who was hosting him there, "Who is that? Is that one of the rookies?" And he goes, "That's Steve Largent." Staying after practice, working hard, and you hear this about the top athletes, and I'm not saying I think I had that, in that I was a very hard worker, and I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow, and I always kept my eyes open. And I was like, what is that guy doing? What is that guy doing? I'd love to see someone who inspired me, and I would go, let me find out how to get more like that guy, And I think those kinds of things, they keep you hungry and help you get through. I remember the time I got my first opportunity, because I wasn't from a wealthy family or anything. I couldn't hop on planes and go to tournaments across the country whenever I wanted or anything like that. One of my clients, one of the dads of this little kid I was teaching, traveled a lot in his job, and he gave me some of his extra miles, and I took a ticket and I went to Minneapolis for the Diamond Nationals, and I won. And then I took that prize money and put it towards my next plane ticket, and I started being able to do that. And then after a while I got a sponsor. But I felt like I was chasing and then being chased by other people, but I think I always kept working hard, not to pat myself on the back, but I always tried to work hard and, through it all.
For me, it's like obviously working with Barry, like when they get these #1 songs and they beat the record that was held by Van Halen or 3 Days Grace, or something like you, Keith, who world champion 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. And it's like to maintain that level of just domination in terms of, it must be so rewarding too. But here's the thing too, knowing both you guys, you're never happy with that. And you always want that next to hold yourself accountable. And I think that's very admirable for both of you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a thing, everybody asks, how does it feel? How does it feel to have these successes? And it's wonderful. I don't discount it, but I never think about it either. People ask, oh, how was it to do that tour with so-and-so, or you got to go here all over the world? And yeah, it was great. I've already forgotten about that because we're working on the next thing. And it's not because it's not like you said, it's not a cocky thing. It's just, I'm not done yet. I got more to do. I enjoy that, but I want to experience more things and experience more life. So you want to work even harder at your craft and get better. And even as you get into, not that any of us are old, but older age, you have to even work harder to maintain this physical shell, and that takes a lot more work.
Right. Love that. One of the interesting things, Barry, when I get to know you is one of these. Well, I forget what show we're at. I think we're at a Godsmack, a co-headline tour or something a couple years ago, and I look back at the trailer, and Keith, sometimes there's not extra rooms backstage in these venues. They'll turn the trailers into like a gym, free weights, kettlebells, battle ropes. It looks like a prison yard, and it's hot and sweaty because it's out in the open parking lot. But there's a punching bag there, like a heavy bag, and Barry's up there kind of doing his boxing thing. So Barry, what kind of led you to kind of incorporate boxing into kind of like your workouts and stuff like that?
It's the closest thing cardio that I could get to drumming.
Okay.
That also helped my mind and my mental space, maybe release some frustrations and things like that. And I've always been a fan of boxing, been a fan of martial arts. I also studied Wing Chun, and not nearly to the level of you, Keith, as far as the martial arts go, but I've always had a joy of doing it and practicing it in the mental game that it takes. And that was the only way I could really bring it to the road, was a heavy bag style workout, because I don't have anybody to spar with out there. That none of my bandmates or people on the road are interested or do any of this stuff. So all I can do is fight the big heavy bag to have that experience, and it also gives me that release and warms up my arms, shoulders, this whole movement that is used pretty heavily in the show.
And Keith, I know we talked about before your boxing background, kickboxing. How important was or if you could kind of reiterate, how important was kind of like the boxing aspect to kind of fulfill yourself as a fighter, make you more complete?
Well, I had so many great experiences with boxing because when I was going to that same time period where I picked up Steve Largent, I was president of the boxing club at the University of Washington. They had a really sweet boxing room there with a ring and heavy bags, and then there was a speed bag room that was a separate room. And we had an older pro ex-pro who was one of the trainers, and then we had this guy who was a collegiate boxer. And it was great because we'd have smokers because these guys trained other places too. So we had smokers between each other and stuff like that. But I think like for boxing, one of the things that, and maybe you can appreciate this, Barry, I'm sure, is, is the rhythm, the rhythm, that I would think is very similar to drumming. A lot of times I say, do it like you're beating on a drum and you don't want to miss the beat.
Absolutely.
That's what I'll say to people, and I think it helped my rhythm so much. So did the weapons training, because I'm grateful to the Wushu, because, like when you're doing flowers with swords or with a long stick, your body has to be really supple to kind of get out of the way of the weapon so it can do its thing, and I feel like that started to show up in my boxing, and I would be boxing someone, and I would realize the application of some martial arts move that I couldn't figure out before, because I love the reality of boxing. I love that it's my fist and your fist and we're standing like this. There's very little theory involved, like in martial arts, a lot of times, even in self-defense, you see it a lot. Oh, the guy is going to do this. They come at you, they stab you, 1, 2, 3, you do this. That's different than having some crazy guy swinging a knife at you any which way, and boxing can get like that. And so, one of the things I learned through boxing was how to get hit, and I remember being a very big fan of Vander Holyfield for the fact that some of the toughest heavyweight fights that you'll ever see are ones that he was in.
Yep.
And he was so good at taking a punch and punching somebody right back. And I would go, I want to do that. I don't want to just get hit and be able to take a punch. I want to be able to take a punch and hit you right back immediately, And so I would practice that, if I felt I was getting a little bit like, when somebody's punching, did that uncomfortable feeling, I would step back, take a deep breath, and go ahead, let him hit you. It's not going to be that bad. Just see if you can hit him right back, And it's boxing is such a great sport. That's why it's an art. It's an art form, and I think that's why a lot of the great fighters now in MMA are good boxers, or have really learned a lot from boxing. It's that in close striking, and it's so awesome. Like if and the defense, I get really into it, you guys, because I love boxing so much.
I love it.
Because some of my moments where I was able to see a punch coming, and it's almost like things slow down when you're in the present moment. When you're really present, it's sort of like being in the zone, and you start to be able to be aware of things that are it's just a little strange, and you probably have it when you're playing the drums sometimes. You just notice something because you're so present, you're so in the moment that things become very vivid and can almost slow down. And so like responding to a punch, that was one of the things that fascinated me with boxing, because, in karate or Taekwondo, you're standing back, kicking each other, feeling kind of safe because of the distance. And boxing is much more intimate, and I used to be amazed with how does he see that and duck with that when it's so close. And then I started to experience that, and I was like, this is incredible. This is awesome. You can't be, like in fear or judgment. Like judgment to me is the worst thing, to keep you out of the moment. You're judging things, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in the past. This reminds me of that time I got beat up by my dad when I was a little boy or something like that.
Right.
You don't have time for that stuff. You got to be
watching for that shoulder to drop so you can duck it.
One of the cool things, I know Barry and I think you guys got off the stage. I think we were touring with Papa Roach, and we all were watching the Conor McGregor Mayweather fight. And then I think we watched the Tyson Fury Wilder fight, but there's just something about watching two guys in a boxing ring, and I guess UFC itself. It's very like watching warriors, the best of what they do, compete is something very. There's no team. Yeah, you have the corner and stuff like that, but it's just two individuals kind of going at it. It's just something very awesome about watching that.
I agree. And why don't you go ahead, Barry?
Please. I was just going to say that, it's amazing to watch the people that do that for a living, the skill set. It amazes me how much just from, our childhood that it has grown into such an amazing sport with the skill sets being so mixed together that these men and women that are true, MMA fighters, you watch them and Keith, you see the boxing techniques, and then you see the techniques from Taekwondo, and then you see the Muay Thai and the Jiu-Jitsu, and it all comes together, and you're like, that is the scariest, most beautiful thing I've ever seen. These people are just insane fighters, and I can't imagine not only the amount of work that it takes to do that, but the mindset when you're going to get in the ring and do something of that nature. It just blows my mind.
I'm in awe of those guys. I every time blows my mind the 5-minute rounds and being able to manage all those different skill sets, and and then you have the different matchups, of, like, I don't know if you watched the one just this last weekend.
Yep.
With Khabib and Gaethje. And I thought Gaethje would do a little more than he did, actually. But I mean, I'm a very big Gaethje fan. But I was so surprised that that Khabib just walked him down, and the abilities of that guy, he's just like, he was striking with him, he didn't like take him right down. And then, like, you remember McGregor went 4 rounds, he got tapped out in the 4th round, and this was the 2nd round this time. And then he retired. It's an amazing sport to watch. But back to boxing for a second. The simplicity of it. And when you look at Mayweather beat Conor, who is one of the very good MMA boxers. He has very good boxing skills, and then he beat a guy named from Japan. His name is Tenshin, and he's one of the top kickboxers from Japan, but he's only like 21 years old now. And he boxed Mayweather too. And, it's just a different level that the guys who specialize in boxing get to when somebody has to manage all those skills. And so I still love really watching boxing too, because it's so specialized, and it's so, Tyson Fury, man, what an incredible boxer. And that match, that was incredible. Wilder too, like he was going, you didn't let me go out of my shield. And I was like, you got to respect that guy so much, and he was hurt, in that fight, and he wanted to keep going, and warriors,
Yeah, it's breed.
Right. And so with Tyson kind of obviously coming out of retirement to fight in a couple weeks, how do you kind of shut that? Is it like, Keith, as a competitor in that aspect of the fighting, is it tough to kind of, once you decide to retire, do you retire because you have nothing else to give and you want to be a teacher now, or do you still have, when you see a fight and you're like, man, I wish I could kind of go in there? Like, how do you shut that off? How does Tyson?
Honestly, it was because I think about this sometimes, because I trained mostly with boxers and kickboxers, and then I would go fight in those point tournaments, and guys that specialize in that are so good at tagging you. Like, you can't. I remember seeing Jerry Trimble do that one day, and I'm sure he was good at it. But I remember one day, you get tagged with a back fist, and they score points on you, and you're, it doesn't hurt or anything, but you're going, you got to train for that. And now I forget what you were asking me originally.
Well, like, how does someone like Tyson, right? How do you kind of shut that off?
Yeah, I think it's hard, because like, I stopped doing it. I took like 4 kickboxing matches, and some of them I didn't get paid for. 2 of them I got like I think the most I got was $250. And I was like, I think I'm going to make more money if I go into the movie business,
Right.
And, hopefully you don't have to get beat up as much, but I was, so that made it a little easier, but I didn't stop training. I found a great place in Los Angeles to work out, and it was a really good place. It was just really good, and now I miss it. I'm just, but it's too old for it. But I think that's why a lot of these guys come back. They've never felt the kind of, endorphins and the high that they get from that experience. And you probably get that on stage sometimes, and it's hard to give it up, And
Yeah, that's a fear.
I definitely feel that. you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fear of the days when, you know, you don't get the big crowds and those kinds of things, and that high from the stage. It's you don't take it for granted when you get it, you know?
That's why kind of reason why we see some of these old bands like Ozzy Osbourne postponing tour 2 years from now. And it's just like, I get it, I totally get it, but it's almost like here's a prize fighter, the lead singer that wants to go out on a shield, doesn't want to be told he can't because of a pandemic. But at what point can you? It's very fascinating to me, and I don't ever want someone to stop doing something because someone's telling him to. But I just wish I could find out whatever that drive is.
I want to, you know, like, I just want to say one of my heroes is Mick Jagger, because,
oh, hell yeah.
you know, like, I was like, I'm just blown away. I'm going, holy, I want to be like that, you know, when I'm his age, you know, and being able to perform that way. There's very little of his age is getting between him and being able to, you know, be at his best, you know, and somehow he must really, I mean, I don't know what he does, but he must take care of himself, you know, because he's seeing, I mean, I don't know, maybe you know, Barry, more about it, but that is inspiring, I think, to a lot of people, you know.
I don't. I mean, you see that comeback video of him dancing in the studio and stuff. And
after a heart attack, right, or something?
Yeah,
or heart surgery or whatever.
Yeah, he's got to be taking very good care of himself. Yeah, he partied early on, but I bet at this point he's got to be taking care of himself to be able to move like that.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes to what we talked about before we started this, Keith, is that how important fitness is to a musician or a martial artist. Like you need that to sustain a high level of whatever. And fitness is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I want to keep doing it for as long as I possibly can, you know, and that's why we were talking about Tabatas a little bit, you know, that, you know, that high intensity interval training I find it very exhilarating when I do it. I feel challenged to get the most out of each little set that you're doing, each interval, whether it's 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And it's amazing how much you can just murder yourself in a good way. In that
very short period of time too.
Yeah. It's just, you know, and then you get that 10 seconds and I'm just, you know, it almost seems like non-existent, the 10 seconds, you know, then you're back to work, you know, and I just love it.
Right. Barry will jump back in here. It's one of those things too, where I know we talked about off the record or whatever, but like the product you're working with now, kind of like the boxing thing, like, can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
I always wanted something, and actually other people are doing, I would call it similar things, but it's also, you know, one of the problems with tubes is you're kind of stuck wherever the tube is, you know, like if you have to put it under your foot or you attach it to a chin-up bar or a door and you're working, you're kind of stuck there, so you can't really move your feet around. And one of the things I've always loved about martial arts is you move around in sports and stuff like that. You lift one knee, you balance, and this device attaches to you. And I'm sure you've seen the ones that people kickbox with on where they have this thing on their waist and they have tubes that go from their hands to the waist and they go to their feet to the waist. Well, this one attaches your hand to your foot. And so you have that, so it works everything in between. And we do a lot of martial arts in it. And with this one, it encourages rotation like medicine balls. Like if you're holding the handle, it's attached to your foot and you take it around this way and the tube actually stretches around your body. So it's tremendous for the core. And so that's been the main thing. That's how I recouped from the hip surgeries and the motorcycle accident, was I was in really good shape from doing it in the first place, but then I was able to get back to it and I didn't even do physical therapy for either one of those things. I just worked it myself, and my doctors trusted me. They just said, why don't you just do what you do and just do it, you know, moderately at first and then build up slowly. And that's what I did. But this is just, I like tubes also, as you know, like you were talking about you were doing that lift and over again and you felt your elbows, and I started to notice holding the mitts, because I hold the mitts a lot for people. And I started to notice my hand getting hit like this, because some people hit them hard, you know, and
Sure.
my elbows started to get really sore. I think I was developing tendonitis. So I switched to holding the paddles, and that completely went away. But I think with tubes, the thing that I was getting around to is when you use them as opposed to a weight. Like I heard about this guy who was on the USC football team, and he was doing bench press, and it came down on his throat, and he had to quit football. And he was one of the number one prospects. Hurt his, you know, it hurt something that they couldn't really fix, you know. And but I think a lot of guys do really heavy bench press, and they rip their pectoral muscle, you know, at the bottom when they're the most stretched, and you're switching directions and going to push it back up. There's more weight there than the actual weight that you have on the bar, because there's momentum coming down and you're changing directions and going back up. So it goes up even higher, and the most weight is on you is when your muscle is stretched to its weakest point. It doesn't make any sense at all. With tubes, and they actually did it with those old Nautilus machines.
Yeah.
It should get harder as you extend, not harder as you're, you know, when you're at the bottom, the most stretched point. It should be easier then, and tubes are like that. And so I love that, and I love that momentum doesn't become an issue, you know. So I train with tubes. I've done it for years, and I think it's really helped me maintain my health and reduce my injuries, you know. And they're versatile. You can create resistance in any direction. You're not relying on gravity for the resistance, you know. So it makes it you need more skill, I think, to learn how to use them in a lot of different ways that are very productive. But it's so worth it. I just think it's really worth it.
It sounds like a cool thing that we can bring on tour and stuff, where you can pack it in your suitcase.
Absolutely.
If you're in the hotel room, like we're always traveling, that's why I love like the chop fit thing. Or like those, I've been using these a lot now for grip strength and stuff. But stuff that you can kind of travel with and bring on the road with you, I think just for the mental sanity is amazing. I think that product, Keith, is gonna be badass.
Yeah, I'm really working hard on it right now. I teach. I'm teaching 4 of those classes a week, and I'm telling you, it kicks my ass every time, and I'm in a good way. I love it, you know. And it has, you can do shoulder, you do a lot of stuff standing, and you know, for example, I can get into, I don't know if you, Barry, if you do any yoga, but you can get into like a warrior one, and you can do like a dumbbell press or a chest fly, and your whole core has to support that activity, because you have to hold your position against that resistance, your posture. And then you're working on flexibility with your legs. They're having to hold you, and you're working the same muscles that you would if you laid on a bench and your core was completely out of it, you know? And so everything about it is about balance, core strength, flexibility, you know, and you can go fast too, because with a weight, like if I punch with a weight, when I get to that full extension, the weight wants to keep going, and then I'm jerking it back. If I do that with a tube, it actually keeps me under resistance the whole time, and momentum is never an issue, you know. And so there's a lot of reasons there's a lot of benefits of using tubes, and I'm a big fan.
It sounds like it. And the full body workout aspect of it, you know, where you're engaging more muscles than just focusing on one muscle group, is amazing. You can get a lot more done in a lot less time, I would imagine, as well, which is good for, you know, everybody's on the go. And you know, the portability of being able to pack it on the road would be great, because people travel a lot more now than they ever did. So those Tabatas, you guys, you know, like I think they're, you know, the guy who created that, if you ever read, you should look it up and just read what he did. He did a test, and he trained the Japanese, I think, Olympic speed skating team or something. But he took groups of regular people, and that's what was really interesting to me. And he took one group and he put them in a 4-minute workout per day, 4 days a week. And he put the other group in 1 hour of moderate exercise 5 days a week. And all of the people who worked out for the 4 minutes outperformed all of those people.
Wow.
Improving their cardio, weight loss, and muscle tone. you
I
know,
believe it.
and it's intense. 4 minutes is intense, but you do get those breaks in the 4 minutes too. You're working, I think, for 3 of the 4 minutes, and you're resting for 1 of the, you know, but they're
Right.
10-second rest intervals. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
It is one of my favorite styles of workout, are the Tabatas or the hit ones or any of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Doing the interval training, it is absolutely my favorite. Been the most frustrating thing of being injured, not being able to do a lot of those, you know. So I'll end up doing sprints up and down the road or things just to try to get that same feeling. But the feeling you can get from one of those workouts is absolutely amazing.
I don't know this, you know, for sure, but I bet a lot of UFC fighters use that method, because when even though you're working for a 5-minute round, it goes in intervals, you know, it really does. You know, like you're working really hard for, you know, unless you're fighting Habib, then you're working hard the whole 5 minutes.
Yes.
There's no intervals.
No.
And it kind of makes sense, Barry, because when you look at your set list, like you have a 3 to 5 minute song, and then depending on whatever Brent says, or whatever the break between, you have that time to kind of reset. But now it kind of clicks why it's very fascinating that that same type of workout mentality is actually incorporated in you guys performing a show.
I never put 2 and 2 together till you just said it. Never even thought about it.
So hearing Keith talk about that, I was like, holy shit, these guys are actually doing a actual Tabata workout, playing songs.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I think that's why the cardio is so important, whether you're in a boxing match or a stage match. You know, it's still so heavy cardio. That's where you're going to get winded. You know, not necessarily always taking the punch, but keeping up is half the battle, not being winded and losing that power. So, yeah, I mean, I know when I did that study for the drummers lab, and it was the study that this young lady's doing out of Canada, and she hooks us up to meters to see how much energy drummers are expending throughout a show. And it was mind-numbing to me. It's the same as a soccer game or something. I think I did in a 90-minute show 1,200 calories or something crazy like that, and the amount of energy, and then you could see it graphed on paper, the Tabata style thing. I never even thought about it, but you see the spike and which songs have more energy expenditure, and it's not always. It was impressive to me that some of the songs that expended more energy are technically easier to play.
Right.
So it's fascinating.
Have you ever put a heart monitor on you when you're drumming?
Yeah, that was part of that one, and I have done it before just to see what's going on.
And, I just think do you ever become aware of your breathing while you're drumming?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think I learned a lot of that, some from martial arts, and trying to be calm. As you were saying before, you know, getting hit and trying to keep your composure and stay calm is never that easy. And nobody likes to get hit in the face. I mean, I guess some people do, but I sure don't. But learning to control that is very important for stage 2, because when you first go on stage, those endorphins and, those first massive crowds you get to play in, you can find yourself making errors and not focused on a song because you're so excited and you can't control your breath. But as soon as you can internally find that peace and calm yourself, everything becomes fluid. And even though your heart rate might be through the roof, the fluidity comes back. And it still happens to this day. We always talk about it within the band that if you ever lost those jitters or that excitement before you go on stage, you might as well quit. What's the point? I still love it. And I still get excited. And sometimes you come out of the gate, for example, playing Download Festival in England, where it's 100,000 people that you're playing in front of, and it's just a sea of people.
Wow.
It takes 2 or 3 songs to calm down, and you have to focus on breathing. Breathing is definitely a large part of it.
That's so cool.
Is it difficult to, Barry, I know, like, obviously smaller crowds, bigger crowds, but are you able to do the same show in front of 1,000 people or 100 people? Or Keith, is it easier for you to compete one-on-one with no crowd, or do you like just having thousands of people cheer you on and stuff? Does that help with you with the fight, or is
one of the things about karate tournaments is some of them had big spectators for the finals at night, but it was usually all the people that competed during the day.
Okay.
Like a lot of the competitors would come and family members and stuff like that, but during the day when you're competing in the eliminations, there's not like big crowds or anything like that. And the biggest crowd that I ever experienced was at the World Championships, and I'm pretty sure it was 1987 in Munich, Germany, in the Olympics Hall, same place they held like gymnastics and stuff like that. It was standing room only, and I think it was over 14,000 people just packed in there. And they did the whole thing like they do in soccer, which I'm sure you've experienced, Barry, where they start howling and chanting. And I felt really pumped up by it. I felt, I felt like, I want to do a good job. I really want to do a good job, and so I think it can be, very inspiring. And I felt it before, even at tournaments where, not quite as much, not quite as many people were there, but we have our big tournaments here where in the finals, there are thousands of people, like the Battle of Atlanta. And I won a grand championship in Madison Square Gardens once. And that was huge for me because of the boxing history, and so that was really cool.
That's cool. I think it's the same. The crowd definitely can sometimes dictate how you feel for the show.
Right.
I think it's harder to play in front of a smaller group of people because you feel, at least from my perspective, especially as the drummer, I'm pretty far back on the stage most of the time. So I can see the first 3-4 rows and then everybody else is just a blur. But if you're in a club playing to 200 people, I see everybody's single face and I think they're looking at me and, luckily I can hide behind that drum kit. Sometimes it's harder to play in a smaller group. I think the most pressure for me sometimes is recording the record, being in the studio, being under that, a lot of guys and gals get they call it red light fever. That red light recording light comes on and they can't perform because they know it's being recorded and the producer and the engineer are listening meticulously to every little thing you're doing. And some people just can't do it. So I think for me, even that is probably more pressure than anything, is being in that studio, because somewhere in the back of your brain that is being put down forever. And it's never going to change once it's there. So you really want to, it took a while. I think that was a bigger learning curve than going up on stage and you might screw up and have a bad show, or you might mess up a song, and that was that day and you get to do it again tomorrow. And you beat yourself up about it. I know I do. I don't like to make mistakes. And if, as the drummer, I make a mistake, it usually throws the whole thing off. So I try not to ever make a mistake, but we're human. The pressure there in the studio being forever can be daunting.
One of the interesting things, Barry, this is kind of like segue into the last part here, is when I was doing the martial arts talks with people like Keith and Lauren and Kathy Long and everyone, Richard Norton, you kind of off cuff said you should talk to my Wing Chun instructor in Florida, and I had no idea that you are actually into obviously the martial arts. I know we've talked and stuff, but how did you kind of settle on that specific martial art?
I think initially it started as a kid falling in love with Chinese styles as a whole. I thought they were all beautiful. And then, of course, Bruce Lee being the big superstar that he was, watching that and tracing kind of his lineage, which was initially Wing Chun before Jeet Kune Do. That's what led it to me. And then one day I got curious and had some time off between records, like, hey, what is locally near me? And so I was looking up different martial arts and trying to find what fit me and sung to me. And it was Wing Chun. And in meeting with Stephen Petrie, Jonathan Petrie, who is the teacher here in Jacksonville Atlantic Warriors, it wasn't one of those type of places you get into and it's okay, here's your belt system, here's how much you're going to pay, and let's get to work class setting. It was, here's what we're going to learn, here's the lineage. Before you even get to even touch anybody, we're going to go through all of these basics. You're going to have to learn all the terms. You better have these definitions. That's where you're going to be tested at first. And it's going to be a long drawn out thing. And I went, yes, this is what I want. I related it very much to drumming. And he was able to relate very much to me through his training. And we found these similarities of, okay, if I'm going to use traditional grip and I'm going to hit the drum, here's your motion. And you're going to do this forever until that motion is perfect. And he was the same way with, the different punches and blocks and all of those things. It was still repetitive motion. Here we are. We're going to practice this over and over again, and the direction and center line. It was an anatomy class, and it fascinated me. And I think if you can find what I found in it, without rambling too much, was a great teacher. And it's so hard to find a great teacher. When you find one that you can relate to, I think that's everything, no matter whether it's martial art or an instrument. And that's what really got me into it. And then to see myself progress as a person and slowly within Wing Chun, it's just been a joy for me, and something that, I have actually not been in a while, and I miss because of touring and everything else. And he's moved, that I still find myself going back to the basic forms and doing those things, but I'm like, man, I got to get closer to it again. It's always part of you,
Love that. And Keith, if you could kind of talk about what was the catalyst to kind of get into Wushu, and what is the main difference and what similarities between Wushu and Wing Chun?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I also was inspired by Bruce Lee and wanted to do Chinese martial arts because I thought that's what he did. I thought he did Kung Fu. And so I wanted to do Kung Fu. And oddly enough, this goes with what you're saying, and you probably know this, that Kung Fu, the word, doesn't mean martial arts. It means to get good at something. Yeah. And the implication is to, deeper than that, is to have the discipline to get good at something that's difficult to get good at. Like you could be Kung Fu at being a chef, you could be Kung Fu, like you're definitely Kung Fu as a drummer, because you've had the discipline to work hard and figure it out and, keep working at all those fundamentals for years and years and years to where you don't have to think about them anymore. They happen. And then that's how more of you can unfold into whatever it is you're doing, I think. And I love the Chinese philosophy and stuff like that. The thing about my experience with Wushu was I was kind of blown away because when my instructor, who was from China, first showed me the videos of these guys doing Wushu, I was like, oh my God, these guys are so good, and they're so good. But the Cultural Revolution in China and everything, they tried to get rid of all traditions of religion, and they tried to get rid of the traditional martial arts, because they didn't want things that would empower the people, I think, or something.
Yeah.
And so I was really blown away when I got to China. I went there in 1980, that they didn't fight. They didn't spar. They didn't fight. They did these beautiful forms. And a lot of it was inspired by the Chinese opera, like the Monkey King and stories like that. And I was really shocked. And I think I was so naive that I didn't really appreciate it for what it was completely. But I thought they should be fighting, I thought they should be, right, like learning how to defend themselves and stuff, but anyway, I think one of the things I did learn from them, and, it's in a communist country and very, in 1980, it wasn't as nearly as advanced as it is now, that these people, each province had their own Wushu team, and they trained 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, just like the gymnasts, and they were employees of the government that got paid to train. And what I learned was what it's like to train 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And, it was really enlightening to me just to see how hard a professional athlete would train, and so I got really inspired. And when I came back from being in China, I tried to keep up as much of that. And that's why I end up training on my own a lot, because you can't always find somebody to train with here, and you can't make that an excuse. So a lot of times, I said I solo trained like 80% of the time, and the 20% of the time I was with other people.
Sure.
So
it's crazy that the legacy of Bruce Lee and what he stood for resonates not only with martial arts, but athletes and business owners and entrepreneurs and bakers and chefs. Like some of the stuff I watch with these cooking shows, like some of these top people are like, they always quote Bruce Lee in the kitchen. And it's like, it's crazy that someone like that could filter through like the entire world and the way of thinking. That's just an incredible. It's just awesome to hear when people are like, "Man, I did this because of Bruce Lee," and that's gotta be awesome.
And when you think about it, he was a young man, you know, and passed away at 32. And you know, I was a lot of times I would go. It just blew me away the things that he thought about. You know, he was a brilliant guy, you know, and way ahead of his time. You know.
Yeah, he was definitely ahead of his time, and for me, that was the first time I saw somebody with that kind of dedication to just about anything that was just out there. He was showing it to everybody. I mean, you could get his book out, Jeet Kune Do, which I have on the shelf over there, which is a classic in the martial arts, and just to read his philosophy and everything, and to watch his interviews and the way he spoke, it was unlike anything I had ever heard before and since, really, in a way.
Yeah, I think he's kind of. His inspiration is going to be timeless. You know, I think it will go on and on and on.
Yeah, he was one of those superstars. He was a shiny star that was only here for a blink, but it changed everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I want to thank you guys for jumping on here today. This has been cool, kind of talking about fitness and the martial arts. And
that's really awesome.
Nice to meet you, Keith. Yeah, hopefully next time we cross paths, we can actually give each other a handshake. That'd be nice.
That'd be awesome. All right.